Hello,
Alright.
everyone. Welcome
Hey.
to the Nerd Grid.
Well, I'm
Hi,
Scotty.
Gareth. And this is a segment we call the SLAMCAST.
Yep.
It's just a basic kind of talk about wrestling. We just go back and forth on certain subjects and give our thoughts on certain things.
Yep.
Sometimes we'll review pay-per-views or just go over history. And today we're doing the latter. Specifically, we're talking about the history of the WCW Cruiserweight Championship and the 205 Live Cruiserweight Championship currently held by the WWE.
Yep.
So, Scotty, the current holder, we'll go into the future for a moment, the current holder of the 205 Live Championship or the Cruiserweight Championship is Cedric Alexander.
Yeah.
Is there any thoughts on him?
I'm actually a big Cedric fan when it comes to his in-ring work. His character could use a little more polish, but as we'll go on later, that's actually a problem that's indicative of how WWE books the Cruiserweight division in general.
Right, exactly. That's a big thing there. Now, going back in time, the WCW Cruiserweight title had a few humble beginnings, if you will. Now, not with its holders, but more its treatment by the WCW management.
Yep.
Originally, it was called the WCW Light Heavyweight title, and its first holder was quite impressive, the Flying Brian Pillman.
Yeah.
Of course, an icon of Cruiserweight wrestling, somebody who brought the high-flying Japanese style to the United States.
Yeah, he was. And he was actually really good at it too. Probably one of my favorite cruiserweights of all time.
Yes, very ahead of his time was Brian Pillman. And oddly enough, we talk about those Japanese roots in the Cruiserweight division, and his first feud with the title was against Jushin Thunder Liger.
Yeah.
Of course, a Japanese legend and one of the greatest wrestlers to ever lace up a pair of boots.
Absolutely. Liger was the trailblazer for what we know now as the Cruiserweights.
Yes, you instantly see that mask and you know exactly who it is.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy has his own anime, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. I actually
To say
haven't
he's an
seen
icon
that,
is
but
another
it's something that's on my list.
Oh, I've seen a few episodes of it, just a few tidbits. It's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I'm probably going to get around to watching it sometime.
It's less of a wrestling anime, more of like they portray him as a superhero, which is interesting. Liger was definitely a big baby face around this time.
Yeah.
And he faced off against Brian Pillman in what could be recognized as a face versus face feud.
Yeah, and I actually think it works quite well. Usually with the dynamics, you usually need that someone to boo, but with a feud like that, with two guys that were really good at what they did, it made sense for them both to be faces or cheered in the feud.
I absolutely agree with that. You know, for the first feud, I believe what the kind of premise was is we need to get two good workers on the title.
Yeah.
Because, of course, to start everything out, it'd be better for two people that, like, can absolutely work with each other as opposed to two people who haven't worked with each other yet.
Yeah. You need that chemistry there to basically make sure that everything flows smoothly.
So, Halloween Havoc 1991, Brian Pillman wins the WCW Light Heavyweight Championship by defeating Richard Morton in the finals of a tournament. And at a house show in 1992, Brian Pillman drops the strap to Jushin Liger.
Yep.
Now, he'd win it back, but an interesting thing here is that he did actually drop the belt to him. There wasn't any like ambiguity here. It wasn't like vacated afterwards or anything. This is before WCW was so hokey about everything.
Yeah.
So, of course, Brian Pillman would win it back. This would be at Super Brawl, the second Super Brawl.
Yep.
And he would go on to hold it for 112 days in his second reign. And so, what do you think for a title so in its infancy? What do you think about these elongated reigns?
I actually think it's fine. I think early on you need to establish a champion and get the belt's prestige up rather than just hot potatoing a new belt around and making it seem like, oh, it's a joke from the start.
Yeah, I think that's important as well in establishing a belt as something that a star can wear. And Brian Pillman, even before winning this belt, was a huge babyface around almost the entire world.
Yeah, and that's why it made sense for him to be basically the big guy in the belt chase early on or holding the belt.
Right. So now we're going to get into a less elongated reign. Brian Pillman would hold it for a while, as I said, and then drop it to Scotty Flamingo, later to go on and be known as Raven in ECW and WWE, as well as WCW.
Yep.
Now, Scotty Flamingo would hold it for 15 days. Astonishing there. 15
Yeah.
days. Don't you love that?
Yeah, those short reigns.
Before dropping it at a house show in Atlanta, Georgia to Brad Armstrong. Very underrated worker there.
Yeah.
I mean, the entire Armstrong family. They've got a few very good names, including the Road Dogg Jesse James. He was a member of the Armstrong family.
Yeah, like I'm usually not a fan of title changes at house shows personally, unless it's one of those televised house shows. But it also does add to the dynamic that a belt can change hands at any given moment.
That is a very big thing about, the mystique of a title. But remember, this is back in 1992. Things were kind of different.
Yeah.
So he would drop it to Brad Armstrong, and then Brad Armstrong would suffer a knee injury. Though holding it for
Yeah.
59 days, he would vacate it, and then the title would be deactivated. So the light heavyweight
Yep.
championship, as it is no more for 3 whole years until 1996.
Yep. And
Specifically, go on.
where Bischoff reactivated it as the Cruiserweight title.
The Cruiserweight title, indeed. And here we go. This is going to get into probably the most interesting part of this video. We get to the holders of the WCW Cruiserweight title. So we start out with an insane, just a great worker here in Shinjiro Otani.
Yep.
He defeats Wild Pegasus in the tournament final to determine the new WCW Cruiserweight champion. And this was a crossover event with New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yep.
Now, I think WCW at this time, they were really good at basically getting these really good workers from Japan that were so ahead of their time. As we always watch, or as wrestling critics, we always watch Japan and we always say, wow, this is what like the current product of America is going to look like in like 10 years. Because we're so behind on that kind of thing.
Yeah. Basically, Japan are ahead of us, but at the same time, what necessarily works over there doesn't always translate to the American scene because of differences in how things are broadcast and storytelling.
Right, but that can be another video entirely.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it will be sometime. So after that, aired on May 18th was the dropping of the belt to Dean Malenko. Now, just that name brings about this vision of such a technical, cagey, crafty worker.
Yeah.
Somebody who comes from a long lineage of wrestlers and is just so insane in the ring. Dean Malenko was absolutely one of the best workers in WCW at this time.
Yeah, and also one of the most underrated workers of all time, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I would put him in the top 20 or top 15 most underrated of all time. He was extremely good in the ring. So he would then drop it on a Monday Nitro to Rey Mysterio Jr., a up-and-coming luchador from California.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of the legacy of the Rey Mysterio you know today. This was his first major title win in American promotion. He did dabble in ECW before this. But
yeah, this was really his breakthrough moment.
It was, definitely. And I believe he says in his documentary that, like, the entire locker room when he came back, his 2002 documentary, he says that they gave him a standing ovation, the entire locker room when he went backstage.
Yeah.
So for somebody so young to garner so much respect from the boys, you know,
Absolutely.
It's a very important thing to have that respect from the locker room, and for somebody, you know, to be so early in their career to get that, very interesting indeed.
Yeah.
Now, Ray would drop it back to Dean Malenko at Halloween Havoc. Notice a trend here. Halloween Havoc seems to be the main cruiserweight title thing here. It's been dropped twice there so far. He dropped it back to Dean Malenko, and then Dean Malenko would drop it at Starrcade on December 29th, 1996, right before the beginning of 1997, to another amazing worker in Ultimo Dragon.
Yeah, in a match that was also for Ultimo's J Crown.
It was for Ultimo's J Crown. Now, this was at the time that Ultimo was wearing so many championships around his waist. He was such a international star.
Yeah, he really was.
And he would continue to be a star like this for decades. It still is, in a way.
Yeah.
Even into, I believe he's about 51 years old now. He's still a very big star, especially in Japan. But it happens like that in Japan, where they continue to work well into their 40s and 50s, and they still get very, very over with the crowd this way. So Ultimo would drop it back to Dean Malenko, and this shows something. And of course, this has been a history lesson up until this point, but this shows something that I like with the early WCW Cruiserweight Championship kind of thing, where they had this group of workers that were always very well in the ring. These technical people, they weren't just high flyers.
Yeah, it was basically establishing the Cruiserweight title as sort of a workhorse style of belt, more so than anything else. It was for those guys that were great workers, but could also show the energy and high flying in the ring if it was required.
Yes, exactly. And this cements the Cruiserweight title. A lot of people think Cruiserweight title, and then they think high flying, they think a lot of planches, over the top rope moves, things like that. But it's also about weight class.
Yeah.
Right? If you're below a certain weight, you're a Cruiserweight. That doesn't necessarily mean you fly. That doesn't necessarily mean you do the flippy flip stuff.
Absolutely not. It's more about the weight class than anything.
It is, and people like Dean Malenko definitely showed that. With his style, wasn't barely was high flying at all. it was mostly just technical. He was a very technical wrestler. Loved the way he
Yeah.
worked in the ring.
Yep.
So Ultimo would drop it to Dean Malenko at Clash of the Champions in Milwaukee. Now, Dean Malenko would only hold it for 33 days before dropping it to Six, also known as X-Pac, also known as Six-Pac, whatever you want to call him. Not the most amazing worker, but still definitely a charismatic kind of person and an icon in the world of professional wrestling. Recognizable name.
And knew how to draw heat to himself.
Yes. There's actually a phrase for that called X-Pac heat, where just like somebody has so much heat that just they instantly get booed upon being seen.
Yeah.
That's when you know a heel has done a great job.
Absolutely.
So, Six would drop it to Chris Jericho. And of course, I don't think any viewer of this show would not know who Chris Jericho is. Just an insane worker, a legend of the business, has cemented his legacy in pretty much any way he could possibly cement his legacy.
Yep, my favorite all-time wrestler.
He's one of my favorites of all time as well. He's just insane when it comes to his ring work, his promo work. Even around this time in the younger stages of his career, he had that style from Japan that we loved, as well as that heel promo work, the Jerichoholics, and like he thought everyone loved him when they didn't. It was amazing. It was just great work from him night in and night out. He was amazing on the mic.
Yeah, he still is. He's one of the best mic workers of all time.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Now, Jericho would only hold it for 30 days, about a month, before dropping it to Alex Wright. Now, as for Alex Wright, he's a good worker. Had that the German, the disco gimmick, and a bit silly.
Yeah.
But he definitely knew how to work it to his advantage, and again, a very decent worker. He had a very nice German suplex. I remember that much. So
yeah, he was solid.
Yes, solid. There you go. That's a great word to describe it. Solid, a C+ player. So he would drop it again to Chris Jericho. And now these reigns don't look like they're lasting a long time at this point. Like Six's reign, it lasted 125 days. But then Jericho held it for 30. And then Alex Wright held it for 15 before dropping it back to Jericho, only for Jericho to hold it for another 33 days. And WWE themselves, they only recognize this reign as lasting for 29 days because the episode of Saturday Night aired on August 16th, but he won the belt on August 12th. So officially the time would be 33 days, but it's only recognized as 29. And that is a short reign with the belt.
Yeah.
So, as you said earlier, the hot potatoing of the belt begins.
Yep. Then he drops it to Eddie in actually a really good match for that time.
Oh, of course, at Fall Brawl.
Yeah.
I remember that very well. And Eddie was establishing himself at this point. I mean, he had already established himself in Japan under the Black Tiger 2 moniker. But now he was establishing himself in the States as an amazing worker and a great mic worker, and just he's definitely one of my favorites of all time. Just
huge Eddie fan.
Oh, of course. He's just one of those guys that looked so natural in the ring. Looked like he was floating almost.
Yeah.
So he drops it to Eddie, and then could be the best match that I go over on this list. Definitely my favorite match that I go over. Eddie would drop it to Rey Mysterio Jr. at Halloween Havoc, 1997.
Brilliant match, and was really the seeds for what would be amazing work between both Eddie and Rey over the years.
Yes, so these two men, their rivalry definitely did not stop here. Eddie and Rey would feud on and off until Eddie's passing in 2005. And I believe Eddie was even a part of a storyline with Rey right before his passing. It was a very long feud between the two.
He was indeed. If I remember correctly, that feud wasn't necessarily the greatest. The matches were good, but like the whole story element of it was just cheesy.
Yes, of course. That's the WWE booking from 2005. We can get to that in a moment. So Eddie versus Rey at Halloween Havoc, definitely one of my favorite matches of all time. Such good storytelling from those two. This match was title versus mask, a lucha de apuestas match.
Yeah.
And they just knocked the house down with their performance.
Yep, it's easily my top 10 favorite matches of all time.
So Rey would then drop it back to Eddie, and sadly, Rey's reign with the title would only last 15 days. Some more hot potatoing with the belt here.
Yeah.
Let's give WCW this. They didn't know who they wanted holding the Cruiserweight title. Because Cedric has had a long reign, which we'll get to later, but these guys, they're just dropping left and right. The strap is being held by everyone. Actually, I shouldn't say everyone necessarily, because it isn't like there isn't an abundance of people who are holding it necessarily, but it's just rapidly being thrown around by everyone.
Yeah, it's basically just going around in circles between a select group of talents.
It is, and here we go again. Eddie would gain it from Rey, only to drop it in 49 days to Ultimo Dragon.
Yep.
And we have 3 consecutive second reigns with the belt. And guess how many days Ultimo Dragon held the belt for?
10 days. The funny thing about this the funny thing about this Ultimo Dragon reign was it was exactly 3 years after he won it the first time.
Thank you for that little fact there. Yes, Ultimo would only hold it for 10 days. That's just minuscule.
Yeah, and then he would lose it to Juventud.
Yes, Juventud Guerrera, the juice. And Juvi would hold it for even a shorter time. He would hold it for only a week. Only a week he would hold it for before dropping it again to Rey Mysterio, it would be his third reign.
Yep.
And Rey's reign, I bet you can guess it was quite short. It was 9 days.
9 days, yeah. And then he lost it to Jericho. It sold out.
He did. Now this is different. Jericho's reign did last quite a long time, 113 days. And I mean, you might not think that that's an amazing amount of time, but compared to the other reigns, this does seem like he's holding it for years.
Yeah, it really does. And WWE actually recognized it as being for 144 days.
Which is even longer.
Yeah.
And definitely a good reign by these standards. One of the longest in the title's history by this point.
Yep.
So at Slamboree, Malenko would win a battle royal, Dean Malenko, and then he was wearing a mask during this battle royal.
Yep. As Cyclops.
Cyclops, a masked luchador. Was it Cyclope? It would without the S?
It was without the S.
Without the S. So it would Cyclope, he would be called. And then later in the night, he would reveal himself to be Dean Malenko. And he would beat Jericho for the title.
Yep.
WWE recognized this as lasting 26 days. And this reign was also short, but for a whole different reason.
Yeah.
The title was vacated on Thunder on June 11th, 1998, because Malenko did not earn the title shot himself.
Yeah. Which is
Now,
fair enough.
I guess it's fair, but I would say it's an interesting storytelling element, but a bit hokey when it comes to booking. Especially because you could have just stripped him that moment when he won the title. In fact, you could have just not given him the title shot to begin with and been like, actually, Dean, you didn't get that title shot. Maybe we should, just let Chris Jericho either defend against somebody else or something like that. I don't know. He held it for 26 days or 25, but 26 recognized by WWE. And they didn't do anything about it until that moment.
Yeah, that just feels like lazy writing, to be honest with you.
That's going to become a trend here in a little while. So Jericho would then gain the title back after defeating Malenko at the Great American Bash. Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
We're beaten by DQ.
Yes, and so on July 12th, Rey Mysterio Jr. defeated Jericho for the title, but this was because of interference by Dean. And Jericho was returned the title the following night.
Yep.
So once again here, Chris Jericho drops it to Juventud, and we're back in the vicious circle.
Yeah. With Dean Malenko as the guest ref.
Oh, it was, yes, he was the guest ref, wasn't he, for this match? Now that's an interesting little additive there, but either way. And then finally, after a 37-day reign, Juventud drops it to somebody new! He drops it to Billy Kidman.
Yep.
Any opinions here on Billy Kidman?
I actually liked Billy Kidman mainly for his work around with Paul London.
So basically like his 2002 WWE work, or 2003, I should say.
Yeah.
So you didn't like his work with The Flock, you're saying?
I didn't mind his work with The Flock and that. But his main stuff with... But the main stuff where I was introduced to him was with Paul London, so...
Yeah, that's how I was first exposed to him as well. When he was teaming with London. London just was able to make all of his tag team partners look great.
Yeah.
So, Kidman drops it back to Juventud on Nitro. And Juventud holds it for a shocking, just impressive 6 days. Now that's a great reign, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know it seems like I'm complaining a lot about this to you guys, to the viewers.
No.
But holy shit, this is an important tidbit. These titles are being just flip-flopped. Like, they're just throwing them at people. And then it's like, now you got to give it back. So an example of that, Juventud drops it 6 days later to Billy Kidman. So why would you make him drop the title in the first place?
I don't know. It just feels like they were like, let's just throw it around and then bring it back.
Right. It's just it's not fun. So Kidman would have a decent reign with it, 113 days to be specific,
Yep.
before dropping it to Rey Mysterio Jr., his later tag team partner,
Yeah.
in March on a Monday Nitro, March 1999.
Yep. And then he would drop it in a fatal 4-way to Psychosis.
Yes, this Fatal 4-Way also involving Juventud and Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg was one of the most underrated workers of this cruiserweight division, in my opinion. I really liked Blitzkrieg a lot.
I thought he was alright. I thought he was decent. Didn't really stand out, but did what he needed to do.
Right. I thought he was jobbed out a bit by WCW. I don't know. He really never really got that big of a chance to shine. So it's not surprising that you don't think he was that good.
Yeah, I don't think he got the chance to necessarily shine, which I'll get to later in regards to the whole writing, booking stuff of both the Cruiserweight and 205 Live.
Right, exactly. This is leading up to that discussion. So 7 days later, he would drop it to Rey Mysterio. And Psychosis and Rey Mysterio Jr., of course, a feud that goes all the way back to their days in AAA, actually.
Yeah. Psychosis was a solid worker. I actually didn't mind his work.
I thought he was fine. The Sonny Ono managerial thing, him just managing literally everyone, that got a bit boring after a while. And of course, Psychosis didn't really talk. He was a bit silent, so he needed a mouthpiece.
Yeah.
I don't know. He was a great in-ring worker, but he wasn't amazing. He wasn't, So
Yeah.
Ray would hold it for 115 days before dropping it to Lenny Lane. Lenny Lane famously being part of I believe they were called the West Hollywood Blondes, a take on the Hollywood Blondes, Steve Austin, Brian Pillman tag team. But West Hollywood, of course, famous for its homosexual sort of population kind of thing. It's just a bit of a stereotyping kind of thing that WCW did, and it's definitely a product of its time and would not ever go over in this day and age.
Absolutely not.
And the decision that they made with the Cruiserweight title wouldn't go over as well. And so they vacated the title due to the publicity garnered by Lane's homosexual gimmick.
Yeah.
So due to a bunch of homophobes, and I mean, of course, the WCW was stationed in the South.
Yeah,
where a lot of homophobia was. Yeah.
Wasn't WCW based in Georgia?
It was based in Georgia. So they got a lot of bad publicity through letting somebody with a homosexual gimmick be their Cruiserweight champion. And through that, they decided, well, we're not going to deal with all this. We're just going to make him drop it. To who? Nobody. We're going to vacate it. And that's just sad. I mean, of course, yes, this is a different time where people are treated differently, but holy shit. It was that bad to where you literally just had to take the belt off of him? Oh my god, it must have been horrible. Either that or WCW completely blew it out of proportion.
Which they probably did. Considering what happened next with the belt.
Right. Psychosis would win it. He actually didn't win it, though.
Yep.
He was more awarded it.
Yeah, and he wouldn't even walk out of the arena that night as champion.
No, he wouldn't. Because Disco Inferno would beat him for it.
Yeah.
It's fun times, ladies and gentlemen. And I mean, I like Disco Inferno. And he was a very silly gimmick, but it definitely worked for him, and he worked it very well. But,
yeah, no, I like the
Jesus.
gimmick as a fun. But
Yes, it was a
wasn't
very
the
fun gimmick.
greatest.
No, he wasn't an amazing in-ring worker. He made it up with it. He made up for it with his charisma. I mean, I remember the little gimmick he had with his finisher, where he would have to take paper down to the ring that had the instructions on how to lock in the submission.
Yeah.
That was very funny.
Yeah.
So Inferno would then drop it to Evan Courageous, a member of 3 Count, the boy band gimmick that WCW ran. Of course, also involving Shane Helms, who would go on to be the Hurricane, and Shannon Moore, who would also find success in, or I should say moderate success in WWE as enhancement talent. So Shane Helms and Shannon Moore, those 2 guys definitely did have star power at this time, but of course, we're going to go with Evan Courageous, or Courageous, or however you want to say his name. I believe it was Courageous. I've heard it pronounced both ways.
Yeah.
So Evan Courageous would win it, and here we are in 1999, the end of 1999, and I believe this is where it all goes downhill. And I'm not going to say that the problem with it was that it was won by Medusa, also known as Medusa Michelli, also known as Alundra Blaze. Amazing worker.
Yeah.
The Joshi style of women's wrestling that I feel severely lacked in the States for a long time, where just these women weren't portrayed as eye candy or objects of sexuality. They were portrayed as just as dangerous as men. And if you see things like Aja Kong or Bull Nakano, just these huge women, and they're very imposing and very strong and powerful. And I love that Japan did this. Of course, they would be more respectful with their depiction. Thanks, America.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Medusa would hold it, and I'm not going to say it's her fault that the belt went downhill, because this isn't that bad. I don't think Medusa becoming the champion was that. It was definitely controversial at the time, because of course this was seen as a male belt.
Yeah,
but
no.
Not at all a bad thing. But then who she would drop it to?
Yeah, this is where I actually think it really started to go downhill. When they would give the belt to Oklahoma, also known as Booker Ed Ferreira.
Yes, Ed Ferreira, specifically doing a very, very mean-spirited Jim Ross impression.
Yeah.
You know, making fun of his Bell's palsy and things like that, which is absolutely horrible. Thank you very much. What a douchebag. Thank you, Ed. If you somehow hear this one day, you're a piece of shit for what you did. I mean, I don't know about what you feel today, but that wasn't very tasteful. Thank you. So yes, Ed Ferreira would hold it, or I should say Oklahoma, my apologies. He would hold it for 2 days because Oklahoma exceeded the weight limit that was required for the title. Oh, Lord. Oh, no. So then we would get the Artist as our champion, and that would be Prince Iokea doing a Prince gimmick, not as well as Velveteen Dream. He was fine, not that good of a worker, not that good of a talker, but he wasn't Oklahoma. He was at least a wrestler. We're heading in the
Yeah.
direction of good, I guess. So then he would drop it at a house show. Back to the house shows in Baltimore, Maryland. And to Billy Kidman. So do you want to tell the audience how long that reign lasted?
1 day.
1 day. One singular, not 24 hours did that reign last. I can guarantee you it wasn't even 24 hours that reign lasted. Less than a day, technically, if you want to be the most technical about it, where a day lasts 24 hours. That wasn't even a day. Where he dropped it back to the artist at another house show in Pittsburgh. And then he held it for 10 days and it was vacated. This was the shake-up that Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo did, where they vacated all the WCW titles. We can get to this in another episode, but holy shit. Holy shit. How bad at booking can you be? Where you just literally go, okay, here's all the titles, we're taking them away.
I know. It's like, are you even trying at that point?
No, not anymore. It wasn't worth it anymore. So then, one of my personal favorite wrestlers of all time, Chris Candido, would capture the title. By this point, much like the other titles Chris Candido captured, it had absolutely no prestige behind it.
Yeah.
Gone were the days of Shinjiro Otani, Dean Malenko, and Ultimo Dragon. Here come the days of Oklahoma and Billy Kidman for 1 day. So Chris Candido, an insanely underrated worker and one of my favorites of all time, he would win it and hold it for, holy crap, 29 days. It's like a miracle is brought upon us. Only to drop it to Crowbar and Daphne. And Daphne. You know, it wasn't just Crowbar, it was both of them. It was both of them, Scotty. It was both of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
It happened to be in a mixed tag match. Yeah.
Yeah, with Sunny.
Yes, or Tammy Lynn Sitch, as she was known in WCW. But Sunny, as she's more colloquially known. And, yes, so Crowbar and Daphne are now the champions. And then they are co-champions for a week. Until Daphne wins it. She defeats Crowbar to become the undisputed Cruiserweight champion. Again, I have no problems here with a woman holding the belt. And actually, Daphne wasn't that bad of a worker. She was pretty decent. I enjoyed her persona. But the problem is that the booking behind it has no direction, and then when it has even a tiny sliver of direction, it's horrible. It's bad.
Yeah,
It's bad.
WCW as a whole was a train wreck at this point, and the Cruiserweight division was just evidence of that.
Yes, absolutely. It would then be dropped to Lieutenant Loco, also known as Chavo Guerrero Jr., the nephew of Eddie Guerrero. And a good worker, and he held it for 55 days. That's like holding it for 200 at this point.
Yeah.
You might as well have given him an entire year. Holy shit. He would hold it for 55 days before dropping it to Lance Storm. Now, Lance Storm was an interesting case because he simultaneously held this title, the Cruiserweight, the Hardcore title, and the United States title. He then gave them all Canadian names. It's the Canadian Cruiserweight title and the All-Canadian Championship, whatever he would call them. this is a good way to get heat. Here's what he called it. So Lance dealt it to Elix Skipper as part of Team Canada and called it the 100 kilogram and under championship. I don't know. Was that supposed to garner heat or make me laugh?
Both.
So, both. It did both. Garnered heat back then, made me laugh right now. Elix Skipper, of course, an underrated worker. Very athletic. No problem with him.
Yeah, same as Lance Storm.
Yes.
Lance Storm was terrifically underrated.
Yes, he was terrifically underrated. I'm sorry for skipping over him there. A very good technical wrestler. He runs his own school now. A couple of really good people came out of there.
Yeah.
Some nice alumni. So Skipper then would drop it to Mike Sanders, above average Mike Sanders, which, by the way, you want to go over that nickname for a moment? I mean, I loved every member of the Natural Born Thrillers, I think that stable was called. Like Palumbo, Jindrak. Okay, Sean Stasiak wasn't that good. Sean O'Hare, amazing worker. Yeah, except for Mike Sanders, and I think Reno was a member of that stable for like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But above average, Scotty. What a nickname! I'm barely passable. I'm just passable, Scotty. I'm above average. Can't you just call yourself like awesome Mike Sanders? I don't know. Something that's better than above average. I get that you're trying to do a heel gimmick here, man, but come on, you're killing me with this nickname choice. Enough hounding him on his nickname. He won it in a handicap powerbomb match. What is a handicap powerbomb match?
I'm guessing it's a match where it had to finish with a powerbomb.
Okay. Now, if I remember this correctly, I think I did watch this. What would happen is Nash would powerbomb somebody. So a gauntlet of cruiserweights would come into the ring, and then Nash would powerbomb them, and then if they stayed on the ground for 3 seconds after the powerbomb, it would be counted as a pin. And this was just like to garner heat for Mike Sanders, because Mike Sanders was going to win anyway, because nobody's going to get up from a jackknife powerbomb from Kevin Nash, and Mike Sanders was the person they were supposed to get up and fight. So it's like, okay, Mike Sanders either way wins because, nobody's going to get up from the powerbomb and, take the piss out of Kevin Nash's move.
Yeah.
So there you go. All this did was make everyone look stupid. Everyone.
Which is what WCW loved to do around this time.
Yeah, absolutely. They were good at it. They did it well.
Well, at least this title reign lasted 63 days.
Yeah, 63 days. It's not so bad. Before he dropped it to Chavo Guerrero Jr. on Thunder. And that reign lasted 104 days. Holy crap! We're getting into something here. A good worker holding the belt for quite a bit of time. That's not so bad. That's 3 months. He would drop it to Shane Helms.
Yep.
And around this time, he would drop it actually at Greed, which was the final WCW pay-per-view. And later that month, the WCW was purchased by the WWE. You all know this. We're not going to go over it yet. Save that for another episode, as I say.
Yeah.
Shane Helms would hold it for 107 days. Wow. And then drop it to Billy Kidman on SmackDown.
Yep.
That's a lot of Billy Kidman reigns.
Yeah, that's his fourth.
That's his fourth. That's 4. That's big. So on Raw is War in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, July 30th, 2001, X-Pac would put his light heavyweight title on the line against Billy Kidman in like a title for title kind of match there. And of course, X-Pac would win. His reign would last 71 days and officially be recognized as lasting 73. Then he would drop it back to Billy Kidman, who would hold it for 13 days, and WWE recognizes it as 11. And then finally, mercifully, we come to the end where Tajiri unifies the WCW Light Heavyweight title or the WCW Cruiserweight title with the WWF Light Heavyweight title to make it the WWF Cruiserweight title. And that's it. That's what we're going to go over, because we're going to go over the WCW history of the title. And there's where it ends. Yep. Tajiri would unify the belts. Tajiri, an amazing worker in his own right. So, starts off decently well. I mean, we get Brian Pillman and Jushin Liger, and then we get it deactivated, but then we get a bunch of good workers just in a circle handing it to each other, which was fine, I guess, compared to what would happen later where, I don't know, WCW just at that time generally was falling apart.
Yeah.
Let's get our minds off of that. Let's get into something a bit better. The Cruiserweight Classic. The WWE Cruiserweight Classic. Now, this I remember being so hyped for.
Yeah, I remember being hyped for it myself and thinking that hopefully WWE would actually book and give the Cruiserweights enough time to cultivate characters and actually give them meaning and prestige.
Right. Let's go over that in a second. So, Progress Wrestling Chapter 29 held 2 qualifying matches for the Cruiserweight Classic, where Zack Sabre Jr. defeated Flash Morgan Webster and Jack Gallagher defeated Pete Dunne. 2 amazing matches, by the way.
Yeah, I've only seen the Dunne one, which was really good.
It was, of course. Two good workers like Gallagher and Dunne would always put on a good.
Yeah.
Then Revolution Pro Live would hold another qualifying match where Noam Dar would defeat Josh Bodum. I have not seen that match. But Noam Dar would then qualify. And then finally, Evolve 61 would also do a qualifying match where TJ Perkins defeated Fred Yehi. Is that how you pronounce that? Yehi? Sorry for my incompetence here. And Drew Gulak would defeat Tracy Williams. Then there would be Lince Dorado defeating Romeo Kivato at American Combat Wrestling. And one more where Tony Nese at Evolve 63 would have to win a battle royal involving a myriad of the other participants, including Drew Gulak, Johnny Gargano, Lince Dorado, and TJ Perkins, who had all earned their spot in the tournament. He would have to defeat them to earn his spot in the tournament, which he did. So the participants were billed as coming from all over the world. This gave the tournament a lot of mystique to it, where we would see some people, especially casual watchers of wrestling, would see some people they would never be exposed to otherwise. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what I really liked about it. It was bringing all these really good cruiserweight talents under one umbrella.
Right. Now there could have been a better way to do this, but I like the way they did it either way. We had people from Japan, specifically 3 different representatives from Japan: Akira Tozawa. We would also have, so we would have 3 representatives of Japan. We would have Akira Tozawa, Tajiri, and Kota Ibushi, who from the beginning I thought, well, possibly he would sign a WWE contract after this, but Ibushi had other ideas, and I think it worked out for the best for him.
Yeah, it really did.
We had people from places like, well, I mean, TJ Perkins was representing the Philippines, and we had Ho Ho Loon representing Hong Kong, and just a myriad of people representing so many different nations.
Yeah.
And we had a decent tournament. Round 1 was mostly squash matches. I believe the big exception there would be Gargano versus Ciampa, which was that's a bit of foreshadowing there,
Yeah.
huh? Yeah, that's the longest match in the first round at 10 minutes.
And it was a good
And
it was a really good match as well.
yes, it definitely showed off the 2 people. And Kota Ibushi and Sean Maluda also made a great showing out of their match. A few botches there, but Sean Maluda is still green. I can forgive that. This would all lead up to the announcement that Triple H made, where he said the winner of the Cruiserweight Classic would be the first Cruiserweight champion, the inaugural WWE Cruiserweight champion.
Yeah.
Now, from that point, I knew anybody who did not sign a WWE contract, who did not put pen to paper at this point, could not win the tournament.
Yeah.
So the semifinals were basically a wash, where the 2 people that didn't sign a contract, Sabre Jr. and Ibushi, were beaten, and Gran Metalik and TJ Perkins moved on to the finals, where TJ Perkins became the inaugural Cruiserweight champion, WWE Cruiserweight champion.
Yeah. All 3 matches were actually pretty good, to be honest.
Well, yes, of course. Despite having predictable endings and conclusions, yes, they were quite good matches. Of course, when you get a bunch of good workers and put them under an umbrella, you're going to have a lot of good matches.
Yeah.
Just good math, you know? Just sweet science. So, you said earlier you were hoping that this would give them an opportunity to get characters right off the bat. Now,
Yeah,
this works with a few different people. Jack Gallagher would bring his gentleman Jack Gallagher gimmick, which I was such a huge fan of. I marked out for that gimmick like every night.
Oh, I love the gentleman gimmick. I think it's really cool, and it's actually somewhat unique in the whole context of wrestling.
Oh, of course, you don't always see a wrestler come into the ring in a 3-piece suit. TJ Perkins had his inspiration, athlete of the future, inspire the kids, that kind of gimmick. You can do what you want. You do anything you set your mind to.
Yeah, it's sort of that motivational speaker, superhero gimmick.
Right, and he dabbed, and then everybody hated him. That was pretty interesting. So Tony Nese, I think, stood out a bit as a heel character in the company of a lot of faces, where he had his premier athlete, his cocky, I'm better than everyone kind of gimmick. That was cool. It was definitely, of course, a standard heel gimmick by all means, but Nese played it quite well, I believe. And then Gulak had his heel gimmick, where he was the throwback, the stretcher, that kind of guy. I don't know. I don't feel like a lot of these people were able to get gimmicks unless they brought gimmicks over.
Yeah.
A lot of these people, unless they were using a gimmick they already had, that in the case of Jack Gallagher, he was already Gentleman Jack Gallagher, and I guess TJ Perkins developed the gimmick on his own. I'm not sure. Tony Nese almost spent his entire career as the premier athlete before this. And of course, Drew Gulak has had the gimmick of a throwback stretcher kind of guy for almost his whole career, just like Tony Nese has. So these guys brought in gimmicks, is what I'm trying to say. And WWE didn't give them much time to develop gimmicks of their own.
Yeah, and that's what I was hoping, that they would get time to actually develop those gimmicks.
Right. Shortly after this, it was announced that the Cruiserweight division would be exclusive to Monday Night Raw. I completely despised that announcement. I didn't want the Cruiserweight division to be exclusive to anything. I wanted them to be switched between Raw and SmackDown. If you were going to isolate them from the other people, which is a bad idea to begin with, why are you also going to bring them exclusively to a certain place too, where you can only see them? It's I don't know. I just thought it was a bad idea.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it was actually won by Raw in a match against SmackDown.
Was it?
Yeah, I think so, if I'm remembering it correctly.
I don't remember that, but you might be right. I'm not going to argue with you. If that is so, it makes a bit more sense, but still isn't, that great of a decision.
The thing is I personally believe that they should have actually just kept it on SmackDown if they were going to film it before SmackDown anyway, because they would all be in the one place.
Right, yeah. They wouldn't literally have to fly from Raw every Monday to wherever SmackDown was being held. You would just have them where SmackDown was. I think it would just be better for everyone. But WWE will be WWE, and they'll always be quite interesting in their decisions. So this Cruiserweight division, in the beginning, I despised how it was treated. We would get almost exclusively maybe a singles match on Raw, maybe a segment. They would fill up the pre-show matches on pay-per-views and possibly an opening match, maybe. And that's an insult to these workers.
They still do in regards to the pre-show.
Yes, absolutely. But I don't know. Right now, it feels like they're a bit more respected, and they're actually having storylines catered to them and things like that, now that Triple H has gotten control of them. But holy Jesus, it's still this pre-show thing. I think it's an insult to these workers.
It is 100%.
And even sometimes they don't get paid their royalties for things like that.
Yeah, it seems as even I'm just gonna say it right now. Right now, you've got guys like Buddy Murphy, Mustafa Ali, Cedric Alexander, and Drew Gulak absolutely doing the Lord's work on 205 Live. But then when it comes to pay-per-views, they're shunted to the pre-show.
It's a sin of the highest order. And even people like the Lucha House Party, which I don't like that gimmick at all. But Kalisto, Lindsay, and Grand Metalik all three of them are great workers.
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like these guys are an afterthought, which is so sad because like you said, Drew Gulak, Cedric Alexander, Mustafa Ali, before WrestleMania, cut this amazing promo on Cedric Alexander. I don't know if you saw the promo.
I did.
But it was about his heart versus Cedric Alexander's soul, and I'd never seen a Mustafa Ali promo before that, and I was so impressed.
Yeah, dude's better than he gets credit for on the mic, and he's, as we all know, incredible in the ring.
Yes. I don't know. He could definitely work up with the people on Raw or the people on SmackDown. He could definitely be a mid-card champion right now.
Yeah.
It's just sad. So, overall, do you think the WCW Cruiserweight title has been treated better than the WWE Cruiserweight?
Honestly, I think in the early days, you could argue perhaps it was, but the WWE Cruiserweight title now is being booked and basically shunted off to the side, just as the Cruiserweight Championship was in the later days of WCW.
Right. So, what you're saying is the WCW Cruiserweight title is a bit superior because at least at one point it was given to people who could main event a show.
Yes.
I agree with
Or
that.
at least-
I think that.
Yeah.
Go on.
Or at least they were portrayed as actually being legitimately worth watching.
Right, exactly.
Actually,
And the 205 Live thing is getting very, very, very bent out of shape, and 205 Live itself has like very low viewing numbers. And these guys are just being treated second class by WWE despite being some of the best workers in the world.
yeah. And it's like it's barely advertised too, which is something that contributes to low viewing numbers. You can't just say, oh, but they're not getting any views. How are they being advertised? How are they being promoted?
It's a very touchy thing here, and really that gives you the whole idea on how WWE thinks of its workers. They're like, oh, we have this batch of amazing workers on one show. We're not even going to advertise it. Just go watch it.
Exactly.
I mean, they'll advertise NXT UK to hell and back before it even airs. But 205 Live airs every week, and you barely see any advertisement for it.
Yeah.
They're doing more advertisement for Evolution than they are for I think that's what that new pay-per-view, the Divas pay-per-view is called, or the women's pay-per-view.
Yes, it is.
Sorry. It's called Evolution.
Yeah.
They do more advertisement for that. And we can get to that later or in another episode, but the little point I'm going to make on that is you can't just advertise a pay-per-view by going, this is historic. This is a huge thing. It's like, all right, cool. And there's no stakes being had here, is there? But yeah.
WWE loves that making history line, but it's for another time.
And to conclude, I agree with Scotty wholeheartedly here. I think at least the WCW Cruiserweight title was given to people who were respected by management, and WWE doesn't seem to respect the 205 Live people. Of course, I and Scotty and the rest of the viewership likely respects them, but we're talking about how much the company respects them in this case.
Yeah.
Which is minimal, at least from what we've seen.
Yep.
Now, I think that about wraps this up, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Wow, this has been a nice talk. Thank you.
Same to you.
And everyone, for the Nerd Grid and SLAMCAST, this is Jeremy signing off.
And this is Scotty saying goodbye for now.